Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Connecting the Dots, hosted by 49 Marketing, a content marketing and SEO consultancy. I'm Neil Robertson, the founder of 49 Marketing, and joining me once again is Della Driscoll. Hi, how you doing, Della?
Hey, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, so for anyone who hasn't seen the first episode we did, I highly recommend you check that out. Della spoke about how marketing freelancers can manage their mental health. She is a freelance copywriter and social media specialist. Did I get that right this time?
You did get it right, yeah. Well done.
Yeah, I got that wrong on the last episode, which was a bit embarrassing. So, Della is based in Folkestone in Kent. She tells me it's a very beautiful place, and I plan to go one day. Better start this time round, and let's get going. So, this podcast is all about introverts and extroverts and the roles they play within marketing. So for context, I'm very much an extrovert. So in a meeting, I'm very much the dominant voice, which I know will come as a huge shock to the people who know me. But in the last couple of years, I've made a concerted effort to shut up a bit more. I got ENTP on that Myers-Briggs, the personality test?
Yeah,
I did that recently. Della, I asked you before this episode what you were, and you said you were an INFJ. So can you start by explaining what that means to anyone who's not familiar with it?
Well, I had to look it back up because I did this test a while ago, but it's the advocate personality. And it's also to do with people that are introverted, very thought-provoking people, care more about like fulfillment in everything they do, have more integrity in everything they do. They're just very conscientious people. And I always think about everybody else. And I think that's just me to a T. So when I got that, I was like, advocate, I sound a bit fancy, but it is quite a nice personality trait when you read up about it. So yeah, that's what it's about.
That's brilliant. Yeah. I must admit, I don't know an awful lot about this at all, but I know that I think I had a look at have you ever had a look at the compatibility charts with these? Because I was like looking at who I was most compatible with. In fact, to be fair, I can probably
have a look now.
Yeah, I can probably have a look now.
I haven't had a look at the compatibility chart, but I remember I got asked to do it when I worked in one of my previous jobs to see where everyone was on like what everyone was and how they can then help us work better with each other.
Would you believe it? And I'm not even, this is just a mad coincidence. So I've gone on this, they have numerous charts on the web, to be fair, but this particular one that I'm on, which is the top result, actually says that the most ideal match is for someone like me, so I'm ENTP, INFJ, which is you, and INTJ are the two.
There you go. Great match.
So I tell you what I'm going to do really quickly. This is a little bit embarrassing that I'm realizing this in the middle of a recording, but my Mac's got 8% battery and I need to charge it. So I'm going to really quickly pause this recording and then we'll resume in a sec. And we are back. Sorry everyone for that, but by now we've established that Della and I wouldn't absolutely hate each other if we worked in the same team. Well, we might do. I don't know, but that's what the science tells us. So do you know what I would say, Della? And this wasn't something I had written down, but I think it's worth discussing is that, some of the people that I got on with the most within a marketing team were actually introverts, because I think the two can complement each other quite well. Would you go along with that? Would you have a different perspective?
No, I would actually agree, because I probably got on with the extroverts of the group a lot more in terms of a working format, because then we'd bounce off each other. Because obviously we have different strengths and weaknesses that complement each other. Whereas if we're all the same, it's kind of like you're not fighting for attention, but you are working the same a bit too much. So I think it is quite a complementary thing to have a bit of both in a marketing team.
And like within a marketing team, what sort of roles do you typically come across where people are more introverted and extroverted? Because if I was being stereotypical, I would probably say that, right, designers are more introverted. From my experience, they're more introverted, but then some of the most extroverted people I've met have been designers. But I would say introverts tend to be more like designers, developers. I always find that, to be fair, and this is where it's quite unusual with you, because obviously what you're going to come on to talk about, but I usually find that copywriters are more extroverted, but that's obviously just my experience. So what's been your experience from the places you've worked at in terms of like, who is an extrovert or introvert, or is it just one of those things where you don't tend to see that?
I think it's like a different playing field for each sort of team I've worked in. Like all the writers I know are more introverted people, because I think being a writer is very much a thinker thing. Like you sit in your imagination a lot, and you're on your own a lot to think and observe. Whereas, yeah, like I would say stereotypical web developers, anyone that works, I'll say anyone in marketing's, in my opinion, more introverted. You get a few extroverted people that are more confident in meetings. Usually those that work in like influencer marketing or like affiliate marketing and those kind of like loud and proud jobs, you know, where you have to talk, be assertive, or like account managers, they're usually quite extroverted because they have to be client focused. But yeah, I think it generally changes depending on where you're at. And also I think on the age range of people, because even if people are introverted, sometimes you don't realize they're introverted because they do come across like confident in a meeting and you're like, oh, they must be extroverted because they talk really assertively and then this and that. So I don't know, unless you get to know a person, you definitely don't actually know if they are introverted and extroverted, or they could be a bit of both. So
which we are going to come on to talk about later. But I've actually got a friend who is, he would admit, is an introverted guy in social situations. But he said to me on numerous occasions in the past that he is a different person in work, like he's more assertive, he's more front foot. And I can't really imagine him being like that. Although he is assertive, like in a social situation, I can't imagine him being someone to like be the center of attention in a meeting or be comfortable with that, because he is very much someone who likes to take a back seat. But I guess people do kind of have different personalities, like in and out of work. One of my biggest, I wouldn't say flaws, but definitely one of my biggest challenges in life was that I was exactly the same person in and out of work. So there wasn't really much of a distinction. At least people always knew who I was, but obviously sometimes you have to rein it in a little bit. And I think that with people like you, that's probably a really good thing. We are going to come on to talk more about that, but just briefly on that, do you think that is a good thing from your point of view, that, you know, it's not like people can ever really hold much against you or say, oh, Della never shut up during that meeting, or Della was like, you know, being really loud and obnoxious? I mean, I would imagine that's not words that would be associated with you very often.
I mean, that's quite true. I think I am myself more in workplaces that I felt comfortable. I think there's been so many workplaces where I've been a lot more introverted than I naturally am, because I've not felt confident in like the setting I was in or who I was with. But whereas now as a freelancer and I have all my co-working friends, like probably don't think I'm an introvert because I am quite loud, probably not too outspoken, but I am loud and confident in how I talk. But yeah, I do think it's probably more of an advantage to not make a fool of yourself if you're a bit too loud as an introvert, because you don't know what too loud is because you're used to being quiet.
Yeah, no, definitely. So this might be quite a difficult question to answer because of how broad it is, but you know, how would you define introversion, and how do you see it influencing your approach to marketing?
I think being an introvert is different to everyone, because as we said, like I think everyone thrives in different environments, and they act differently in different environments. But I would say for me, being an introvert is someone who has social batteries for certain things. So like some people will completely drain my energy and some people will like make it better, and I'll become more confident and more loud. So it really depends on like the room or like group of people that I'm with. But I also think being an influencer, like I'm a lot more observant, like the influencer, an introvert. Oh my God, what am I saying? I'm an influencer now. But yeah, I think being an introvert, I sit and I observe a lot more. So I have more time to like take in what everyone's saying, and I can think about a problem or think about an idea and like how I can develop in my head before I just say the first thing that comes to mind. Whereas I think a lot of extroverts can just be like, oh, this, and they say it, and they don't take the time to really sit and like think and reflect on what's been saying. If you sit for a while, you can think of a better idea, or you can make it better. Not saying the initial idea was bad, because you know all ideas can be good, but it gives you more time to be a lot more focused and a lot more thoughtful about what you're going to say and how you could bring that to a team. So yeah, I think being an introvert in marketing has benefits in that way, because you can be, you know, marketing is all about ideas. It's all about coming up with something fresh and new and being creative and being quiet and listening and observing and watching out the window and watching people interact. Like things can just spring to mind more. Whereas if you're like really in the moment and like talking with everyone, you can't sit and observe and like feel the mood of the room because you're too busy in the room, like doing the rounds of the room. So yeah, I think that's why I would say like introvert is to me in a marketing setting.
I love what you said there about observing and feeling the room, because look, it's something that I may never change completely, but I am making a concerted effort to try and change. So whenever I have meetings with people or calls with people, I have an AI tool called Otter, which is like a transcription tool. So it'll transcribe all of my conversations. And there was one conversation I had with someone recently, and it has basically like percentages of how much each person has talked in that call. And I had talked for 82% of it. And I really, so I watched, no, honestly, I was laughing. I was like, okay, I really need to learn to listen a bit more. And what I have done recently is it sounds really weird, this, but I've like tried to get my talking time down to about 40 to 50%, maybe less. If I'm on a prospecting call, for example, and I'm asking them about their business, my target is to speak for 30 to 40% of the time. It sounds very scientific, but recently I actually was on a call where I spoke for 20% of the time, which I never ever thought I could do. So a big pat on the back for me for that one. But but what people have that phrase, or people use that phrase where it's like you've got 2 ears and one mouth. Now I don't necessarily agree with that, because someone's got to talk more than someone else. But I do think you have to find a balance. I definitely think that you want to, obviously in an ideal world, you want to make it 50-50 as much as possible, or slightly less than that if you're the one who's coming up with an idea and you need to listen to someone in order to do that. But I absolutely loved what you said there about observing, because I've noticed that since I have started shutting up a little bit more and just listening to people, and you just pick up on so many different angles or ideas. Like I did sales training last week, and I barely said a word. Like, it was great. I learned so much about myself, my business, and about life. So
it's great. It's great to listen. My mum always says you're a great listener. I'm like, well, got good practice. I like listening. I think it's so nice to listen to people. I think so many people don't feel like they're listened to as well. So being an introvert, like, I think I'm good at making sure people are heard by listening to them. I actually said it is really good for hearing like different perspectives, because everyone has their own ideas, everyone has different perspective or life experience. So if you listen more, you can learn from more people, and learning is the key to literally everything in life. So it's a huge benefit listening a lot.
No, it is, and like, you can learn stuff about people, like even my close friends and family. You can learn stuff about them that you never would have known if you'd have just rabbited on and made it all about you. I think the big thing in any conversation, whether it's a work conversation or a personal conversation, is to not just have an interest in the other person and really engross yourself in their story. That is such a huge thing. And I do think, and listen, I'm not trying to pretend like I wasn't the guilty party in this as well, but you are often in a lot of these meetings where it's just like a who likes the sound of their own voice contest. And you think, we're not actually getting anywhere here. Everyone's just sort of talking at each other. And and you guys are in the background, and you've got all these gems of ideas, and you're not telling anybody. Brilliant.
You've got to wait for the volume to go down. And then you can
exactly. We are going to kind of look at both sides of the coin with this, and obviously you touched on some of the benefits there, but I want to kind of go back to some of the things that you said you struggle with, especially when you started out in your marketing career. How did you find that being an introvert held you back in various situations, whether it be like a social event or a meeting? I don't think, can you say brainstorming anymore? You can't, can you? Mind mapping, ideation meetings.
Ideations. I love it.
Ideation. We love the word ideation. Sounds fancy. Yeah. Did you ever find that, Della, that held you back, or have you got any examples that you can give me there?
I think when I first started out in marketing, I was very young. I'm still very young now, but I was only like 19. And I was very, very, very shy. Like, my anxiety was really high. I wasn't very confident in social situations. I was very quiet with new people. So I really struggled with both the social aspect and like the meeting aspect. Like, I wouldn't put myself out there and talk to people in the office. I'd be very like to myself. Or luckily in my first marketing job, like, my sister was in the same company, my twin sister, and so was one of my best friends. So I already had a little circle. So that was quite nice, because I didn't really have to put myself out there too much. But also meetings, it really held me back, because I would be too shy to like say my ideas or share my thoughts. I would just like sit and listen, and I don't think I was really giving anything. Like, I remember in one job, even like after working years in marketing, I remember in this job I would just sit there and like count who has spoken. Like, I remember going around in my head going, they've said something, I haven't said anything, I need to say something, I need to speak at least once. Because even that shy person over there, she has said one thing, so I need to say at least one thing, so I know someone knows I've said something. And it's been that for years. And I think when groups get even larger, I would struggle even more, because it's like you have to like not as a shouting match, because it's not, but like the people with the louder voices are going to stand out a bit more. And because like I'm not one to like assert my voice really loudly if there's a big group of people, I really struggle to put my hand and be like, I think I have a point. Or then you go to say something and then someone interrupts you, and then you're like, okay, and then I'll be too nervous to be like, I won't say anything now, because it's that like, you know, I don't want to be too loud or in the way. I'd rather just sit and listen. And also then it's like you doubt yourself if I was good enough in those situations. So yeah, I did really struggle with, you know, being outspoken or speaking up. But I realized as I have gone through my marketing career and like grown as an adult that a lot of it was just confidence. Like I remember I used to work with these girls and they were so like confident and loud and they're always talking, and I was just like, oh, I want to be like them, they seem so amazing. And then when I grew my confidence and grew more myself, I was like, they were just confident, they weren't any better than I was. They were obviously lovely people, but it was just them being confident. Like I could have done the exact same thing if I was just confident, you know? So yeah, I think that's what I struggled with the most, was the being not giving my all, and also potentially missing out on opportunities because I haven't said my ideas. So, you know, people didn't use my ideas, or I didn't get that praise, or, you know, that growth or development because I was too shy to say anything. I would just sit and like probably seem like someone who isn't interested or isn't hardworking because they're just sitting there and not saying anything, and then being too shy afterwards to be like, I could have said something in the meeting, because I didn't want to email and be like, oh, I did think of this actually, because then they'll be like, well, why didn't you say it in the meeting? It's like I didn't ever, you know what I mean? So it's all those sort of things.
I've been, do you know what? I've got an admission to make in light of that. I have been guilty of speaking behind people's backs before, saying they did nothing in that meeting. They said nothing. Like, what were they doing? They you automatically assume. So it works both ways, right? So I would assume that an introvert in a meeting would have nothing of value to say, and they might as well not be there, or they weren't thinking of anything. They were just sitting there like a spare part, and they wouldn't do anything. Whereas it's really interesting to get an introvert's perspective, because I don't want to misquote you here, but it sounds like what you're saying is you're thinking that the most extroverted people in the meeting are the ones with the best ideas, or they've got the best ideas. Or I reckon that's something that a lot of introverts fall into the trap of thinking, which is like, oh, they're speaking a lot, so they must know more than me, or they must have a better idea. Or even if you think you've got a good idea, if I speak up about it, they're just going to talk over me again, and it's, you know, you go back to square one. So it's really, really interesting to get your perspective on that, because look, I've been very guilty of misjudging introverts before, thinking, well, I'm not going to bother asking them, because what do they know? They never fucking say anything. Whereas you're thinking, well, I don't want to say anything because all you're doing is talking over each other, and like, I don't know how I'm going to get a word in edgeways, and even if I do, you're all just going to, like, you know, dismiss my idea or jump into something else. So it's really interesting to get your perspective on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I like sharing my perspective. It is interesting because obviously I did work with lots of people like me as well. And I remember we'd be the only ones in the meeting that weren't saying much. And it was the same people talking all the time. And I remember this one, because me and this girl I worked with, we were the social media team. And then there was within a massive group of marketing people, and like we had this ideation one day, and one of the girls who was like one of the louder ones, like she's always talking, she was great, she always had great ideas, but she was always talking, and I was like, I want to talk like her. And she was like, oh, I want to be in the group with the social girls because they know what they're talking about, they have great ideas. And I was like, we've been seen. Our ideas are here, because we were both introverts. We'd always have meetings together because it was just the two of us, and then that way, you know, you can really just chuck out loads of things because it's just two people. And then those sort of settings, I'd really thrive in like smaller groups because I could really get my voice across. Didn't have to shout. I wasn't intimidated by too many people. But yeah, I would always remember that. And I was like, I do have good ideas. I'm not just seen as, you know, a novice or no one that's not good at anything. So it's a nice little memory. Yeah, and also like seeing that. How extroverts did actually like introverts and didn't just think we weren't doing anything.
Amazing. Was that a real shock to you when that happened? Was it almost like a moment of validation that you weren't expecting?
Yeah, because I was like, and also I think it goes to the thing as well, like popularity always is like a thing you've had from school. And I always, in my head, I'm like, the louder people are the more popular people, the more confident people. So in that situation, I'm like, well, I'm quiet, so obviously people don't like me, or people aren't, you know, interested in working with me or talking to me. So it is that sort of validation from like a likeness perspective, but also, oh, my ideas are good, like I am knowledgeable, I have something going for me here. So it was really nice. And I was like, and she was lovely though. I mean, that team I worked with, they were all lovely. Like I really liked them all. it was really nicely validated by her, because I was like, I've been seen by someone who talks a lot and
Yeah,
knows what she's talking about and is confident. So yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it.
amazing. And one final thing before we go on to the next question, actually, because I thought of this when you used your example before. What did this note of everybody who was speaking look like? Was it just like a person you didn't like very much, or someone who would speak a lot and you just have there? Was it like a tally chart, or how did it look? This
in my head, yeah. I would just go around the room and like take in, and like in my head go, okay, they've spoken, and like just add it up in my head. And then as soon as like the quietest people spoke, I was like, I need to say something now, I need to say something. And then I panicked because I haven't said anything, and the ideas I had would just like go, because my brain was like frazzled, and I was like, oh no, what if I say the wrong thing? And then I'd overthink the whole thing, and I wouldn't even speak. Yeah. But it was great fun. I mean, that's like introvert and anxiety together, to be fair.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? There would be times where I'd come out of a meeting and I would reflect on that, and I'd think, I've got a horrible feeling that, and I said about the otter transcription before, I feel like I'd come out of some meetings where I'd spoken probably for about 70-80%, and you just think, because it gets to a point where when you're speaking that much, you're not sure whether people are actually taking in what you've got to say, or whether you're past the threshold of, I wish this guy would just fucking shut up. Like, almost like they stop taking in anything. It could be the most profound thing in the world. It could be the best idea ever. And they're just thinking, fuck, I'm so bored of listening to Neil's voice. Like it could be that. So that's why I think balance is so important. But, 100%. It wasn't actually the benefits question. The next one was the comfort zone question, which I think, to be fair, you've touched on there, but you've actually got some good ideas here. We talked about this before the podcast, but yeah, if you can give me a specific example of a time when you had to step outside your comfort zone as an introvert in a marketing related situation, and tied in with this question. This is like another one of my job interview questions. What did you learn from that situation? But yeah, tell me more.
I think the biggest thing which always stand out to me, I've had so many marketing jobs, but like this specific job I'm talking about a lot was the one I think I learned the most, because it was the one that really I worked in the biggest marketing team I've ever worked in. And whereas other jobs, it was always really small marketing teams, or, about 5-6 people, whereas this was like 15 of us. So it was like, there's a lot of people. I don't even have this many friends. I do, but not in the same circle. So I remember every week we had to do it was kind of like a stand-up meeting, I suppose they would call it, where each of the teams within the marketing teams, there was social, SEO, web, all those in like the same room, and like every single team would have to like say what they've done with the week, like their successes, their failures, what they're working on, things like that. And me and the girl that I was in my team with, we were both quite shy, so we'd always take it in turns to have to say what was happening. When it was my turn, I used to dread it. And my friend, she was so good. Sometimes she would just do it again because I'd be so nervous and didn't want to do it. She'd be like, okay, I'll do it again. It's fine. But yeah, we'd have to just go, literally just read what was on the paper. Like, it wasn't even that deep. You didn't have to like present anything. It was just like, we were working on this. These are our successes, blah, 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 whatever it was. And I used to be like sat there in knots, like I don't want to do it, everyone's going to stare at me. And really, I don't think anyone really cares that much, because to be honest, the only person that probably cared in that room was the actual like manager of the team, because she wants to know what people are doing, whereas everybody else was just like listing things. It really wasn't that deep, but I used to hate it. And what I learned was like, well, nobody really cared, and like, if I messed up, no one was going to notice apart from me. And that also that I could do it, and I could stand up in front of 15 people and say what I was going to say. And we also in the same job had to do this task where we all did a presentation about ourselves, so people could get to know that everyone that works in the team, and we had to present this presentation obviously in front of the entire team. And like when I made it, I was so nervous, but when I delivered it, I actually was like, I'm fine. I think it was easy because I was talking about myself, so there's no like script. I'm just like, yeah, this is me, this is what I do, this is who I am. You don't need to use a script for that. But yeah, I did it, and I was like, I could present in front of these people. I can give ideas. People are going to listen to me. They are going to hear what I have to say. I do remember every time I did speak up at meetings, because it was rarer, I would get a bit more like acknowledgement from it, whereas because people, if they spoke up all the time, you just kind of expect them to speak up, whereas because when I spoke up, I actually could see people in the room going, oh yeah, and actually listen to it a bit more, which was quite nice, because I was like, oh, maybe I should speak up a bit more, maybe people will listen to me, maybe I will be heard. So it is, yeah, I've learned a lot of different things. Like, I can do it was the main one, but also people do want to hear what I have to say, and I do have value in a room full of people, which was nice, you know, and a nice bit of validation is what I need for my confidence. So yeah, I think that, and those are the most things I've learned.
You do hear that phrase fail fast a lot, but that's easier to say if you're naturally an extroverted person who's a bit more out there. So to be honest with you, I get panic attack quite a lot. Like when I do presentations or when I do talks, not like as much now, but I used to get quite a lot. But I always felt it was easier for me because I talk so much anyway. People already know what I sound like, and they know kind of what I've got to say. Whereas when you're introverted and you're not speaking that much, it must be a lot more difficult because you're thinking, well, people don't really know that much about me, or they don't know what I've got to say in the same sense. So, like, I think you know, I said this on a previous podcast, you should be so proud of yourself for, like, you know, pushing yourself out there in spite of all that, because you know that initially cannot have been comfortable. And as you've said there, the more you did it and the more you got that validation, you must have really started to see yourself in a different light. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, it was definitely like, I can be more assertive, I can speak up in meetings, I am good at marketing. I mean, at that point, I think I worked in marketing for like 6-7 years. So like, I knew what I was talking about. Maybe, yeah, that sort of time. So I was like, why am I doubting myself here? What is wrong with me? Everyone else isn't doubting themselves in the room, they're just speaking. So yeah, it was really nice to get better at it and be more confident in meetings and get used to meetings and getting used to work with more people. Yeah, it was a good confidence boost and a good learning curve, you know.
And I think that, you know, going back to our last episode, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, a lot of it is down to mindset as well. You know, we used that Schitt's Creek example. Nobody cares, you know, during the driving test, so people can watch that if they want to find out more. But yeah, it definitely is down to that. And like, because I mean, quite often you'll have a better idea than the person who speaks the most in the room, and it's just so good that now you're unleashing those ideas, you know, out into the world. So, you know, and that kind of leads on to our next question, which is about, you know, the benefits of being an introvert. And, you know, one of the biggest things that I took from what you said earlier was that, you know, you are able to listen and observe a lot more, and take maybe a lot more in. So, you know, with that in mind, how do you think that, you know, has it helped you in that way? Are there any other examples that you can give of how being an introvert has helped you?
Yeah, I think the main thing is, as we said, to be observed and be thoughtful and all that. But I think also being an introvert, like, I'm more aware. I think it's being an introvert, but also I'm quite empathetic as well. That I'm aware of people's feelings and I can like read a room better. Like, because I'm like sitting there and observing, I can like see people's like reactions, see how people are, you know, thinking and feeling just by their facial expressions, by their body language, and I can take that in and then be like aware of like how I speak to people, you know, which I think is a really nice skill, because everyone wants to, you know, like we said, be heard and feel, you know, secure and safe. So I think that's a nice thing to have, going, okay, what's going on in the room here? What's the vibe? How's everyone? What's going on? I think that's quite a nice advantage, because then after that meeting or after, you know, that instance, you can go up to them and be like, oh, are you okay? You know, do you want to speak about anything? Like, do you want any help? Whereas I think if you're just constantly talking, you're not really looking around, like we said before, so you can't really observe necessarily how people are feeling as much, you can't grasp it. Whereas because also I'm an introvert, I can notice when someone else is feeling uncomfortable in a meeting or doesn't want to say anything, or, you know, I could always maybe help them and be like, I'll speak, I'll say it. You know, so it's like being more aware of everyone, I think, is probably a good advantage as well.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the biggest mistakes I made, especially as a manager. You know, was not maybe checking in with people as much as I could have done, or asking questions. And I think that, you know, people must find that a real breath of fresh air when you do something like that, because especially when you're in a team full of people that are maybe more extroverted or ambiverts or whatever, when you're not taking them to one side, that sounds really ominous, but when you're having, you know, a conversation with them and, you know, asking them how they are, they must find that in some instances a bit unusual, because how often do you go into a workplace where people A, ask how you are in the first place, or B, ask you and actually care? So like, for you to do that is brilliant, and they must have really liked that.
Yeah, I think everyone was quite similar though. Well, like it was quite open and nice. Everyone was asking how people are vibe.
Yeah.
It was
That's
quite a
good.
Gen Z vibe, millennial vibe. Everyone was aware of people's feelings, which was nice.
Yeah. No,
But,
that is really good. We've touched on this a little bit. So, as we know, working in marketing often involves being in ideation meetings, as we now call it, and working on, big creative campaigns with teams of people, everybody giving their ideas. I don't know if this still happens, but, post-it notes on the wall, figuratively or literally.
Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah, I do as well. With that in mind, how do you balance the need for solitude and reflection, which are obviously often associated with introversion, with the collaborative nature of marketing?
I think when I was employed, it was a lot harder because you had expectations. Your calendar wasn't everybody else's; it wasn't yours to make the decisions. But I think what I used to do was before the meeting, I would spend at least like 15 minutes like preparing mentally for the meeting. I go, right, this is what's going to be expected. This is what you need to do. You're going to hope maybe need to say this, like maybe come up with some initial ideas beforehand or talking points in case I go blank and I don't know what to say or what to do or just panic. I have something written down on paper. So I always used to like mentally prepare for a meeting because then my brain's ready, I'm ready. And then after that meeting, I would always make sure to have like not necessarily time on my own, but time to like reflect and like process what's happened and be a bit quiet for a while. Obviously, unless there was another meeting afterwards, then didn't have time. I'd process after both meetings. But yeah, make sure I have processing time to work through those meetings. Having anxiety as well. Like my thoughts would be like, did I talk enough? All those things. Yeah. So it's nice to have processing time. But as a freelancer, it's a lot easier. Like I don't overbook my calendar with meetings in the week. I make sure to get the balance right for me on mental health because I can't do too many meetings because, as I said, I need processing time before and after meetings when it comes to talking to people. So I like to have enough time to do both of those things and making sure I'm working effectively with everything else I'm doing in the week. So I book too many meetings in a day, I feel like I will lose so much time because I would like to have the before and after reflection, and that's just time. So yeah, I make sure to have a calendar that's flexible for me and my needs, and what's going to be suitable for my clients as well. But knowing they'll get the best out of me, and also making sure I organise alone and quiet time. When there's no sound in the room and I'm just cracking on and I can just do work. So yeah, I think it's just about organising a calendar that is suitable for me.
You said in the last podcast we did that you're a super organised person, and I'm really interested to know how. I mean, do you put actual time aside for, alone time, quiet time? Do you block out your calendar with that? Or, so how do you do it? Because I find, you've said in the past how organized you are. And if there's one thing I need to do better, it's having time to myself and for myself. So how do you typically do that?
Well, I usually organise my week like at the beginning. Well, it depends. If I've got like monthly retainer stuff, that'll be mapped in for the month. Like I'll know what I'm doing every week and there'll be time for that. Or like projects I'm working on, there'll be mapped out time across a calendar over a week or so. But when it comes to like booking alone time, I always make sure I have a lunch break. I always make sure I have a morning routine where I have some exercise, I read, I do some like quiet things to get me into the day. If I don't do those things, I feel a bit lost. So I like to make sure I, have a real morning routine. And then, like we said with the meetings things, I always book in time before to like go over everything, prepare it, sit with myself, and after just to have a bit of quiet time. So yeah, I do book in before and after some meetings, and I make sure I never overfill my calendar in the day ever. No. Because if I do that, I will just be stressed and I won't work productively. I'd rather underfill it and then know I've got more time and I can book things in than overfill it and then go, I literally cannot squeeze anything in and I'm not going to be able to work effectively. So yeah, always underbook the calendar. So then if people want a last minute meeting, I can book it in. Or I can, if someone have a last minute job come in, I can book it in throughout the week. So that's, I suppose that's how I stay organised. I don't know if that's helpful, but that is
it's really, it's more than I do. And I'm sure it's more than a lot of people watching this do. So it is really useful. I mean, just one final thing on this. So I'm not going to ask you loads of questions about this. Just keep throwing questions at you. But do you have like an ideal threshold for the number of meetings you'll typically have in a day? Because some people say that they cut it off at like a few hours. Some people can do a whole day of meetings. I used to do that, but I must admit that made me feel really burnt out. So, I mean, do you have like an optimal number in mind during the week, or do you allocate blocks of time to certain things that are more of a priority than others?
I think it depends on the week and also depends on my mood. But generally, I think if I was I would never have a calendar a day of meetings ever. My partner works in an agency and he just has days full of meetings. And I just think, I cannot think of anything worse. I couldn't do that. So I'd probably say 1 or 2 meetings in a day would be like the max. Like 2 would be probably the max I'd do in a day. I mean, if they were just like 15-minute catch-ups, I'd do more. But like hour meetings, I'd probably only want 2 in a day. So over the course of the week, that's still, if I did it every day, 10 meetings. But I don't tend to book in that many meetings, unless they're like, discovery calls are generally a bit shorter. So that's fine. But yeah, it does depend on the week. But I try to make meetings as spaced out as possible so I can give my all to each of them rather than just like block them in to make sure I have everyone in my calendar, because I don't think that's very effective on how I work. So yeah.
I've done that. So recently I had 3 back-to-back 1-hour meetings and then an hour to just do client work, eat some food, and then another 3 meetings after that. That was one of the stupidest things I've ever done, because it killed me. That's what when I worked in an agency, you talked about your partner there. That's what I was like. So I've tried to not do that. I mean, to be honest, since I've been freelance, I probably, even in like a busy day, will have 3 meetings, if that. So it's quite nice because you really can give your all to it and focus on it. And then obviously look on your Otter transcription tool afterwards to see how much you talked. But again, we've been through that.
It's true. Can I just pause for a second because I realised my laptop's also going to die and it's going to
That's good. I don't feel so bad now.
Yeah, it was actually really like 75% charged before this meeting, and I was like, oh, that will last for the hour. But sometimes it's very like up and down. It will like drain really quickly or last all day. It's very temperamental to the laptop. So
that's fine. We will prolong the suspense that bit longer. Keep people waiting. Hopefully, I can say it, and we will be back with you in 1 second. Perfect. We're back. We are back.
All these technical faults, eh?
Right. I got so engrossed in what you were talking about, I can't even remember where we were. So, can you remind me? I have absolutely, my brain's just gone to mush. You're talking about how let me just check the doc because I can't actually remember. Oh, how you balance the need for solitude reflection with the collaborative nature of marketing. And you were saying about, how you block out your time and stuff like that. I remember now. I was talking about
the calendar conversation, the organised life.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's more effective to have less meetings in and knowing you can give your all to them than have a million meetings in just to say you've got meetings in, because then you can't prepare for that enough. You need solid time. So
yeah, brilliant. What do you feel are some of the most common misconceptions about introverts, particularly within marketing?
I think number one is that we're shy. Because I know I've always been quite shy, but I'm only shy with new people. Like if I'm people that I know, like my family and friends, I'm so not shy. Like I'm just so confident, so loud, very just myself. I don't come across shy. And that's why my friends and family are like, you're not shy. I'm like, yes, I am. Do you not remember when I was shy? I mean, obviously they knew I was shy when I was younger, but like now I'm not seen as shy in family and friend settings because I am, as I am, just me. But then if you put me in a group of new people, I'm like, I just sit in the corner, don't talk. So I think that we're shy because not every introvert is shy. Every introvert is different. And that also that we don't like socializing. I think people have this stereotype that we just sit there in a room in the dark and read books. And granted, I do that a lot, but I do also like socializing. Like I love socializing, especially with people I know. I do like meeting new people, but I just need to be warmed into that situation first, and then I'm fine. I think all introverts are different in that. Like some love socializing, some in the middle ground, and some don't like it as much. But I think it does go hand in hand with social anxiety as well, being an introvert. But I do really enjoy socializing. I think it's one of the greatest things. So yeah, I think that's a big misconception that we're just really quiet, really shy, don't talk, want to sit in a room, don't want to talk to anyone, don't want to be friends with anyone. Would be like my main things, I think. And also, I suppose, because we don't speak up, people think we don't want to make ourselves known. We're just, don't like ourselves, or we're very self-hated because we're just, shy. I think that's also a stereotype. But...
and obviously, if anyone follows you on social media, the Violet Network on Instagram, they'll see that you are big on socializing. I know that. I saw your co-working photos from the other day. And that is a massive misconception, that introverts just go into a dark room, as you said, write some poetry with a with a candle, and just go to bed at 9 o'clock every night. I think that is definitely, because I know from speaking to you, how kind of sociable you are, and I think that we are going to come on to talk about this a little bit, but I don't think there's even one type of introvert, never mind an ambivert or an extrovert. I think we are all our own unique personalities. I mean, one thing that's just come to my head, one question that just came to me then.
Yeah.
Obviously, as we touched on earlier with the Myers-Briggs stuff, there are different types of introverts as well. So, like, you're a very specific type of introvert, but there are other types of introverts. I mean, do you know, I don't know much about this, but do you know what some of the other types of introverts are, or like the sort of traits they have? I mean, or have you ever met an introvert who is different to you in quite a lot of ways, and people might from the outside look at you and that person or those people and think you're very similar, but actually there's quite a big difference. Have you ever really met anyone like that or come across that before?
I've definitely met people who are introverts who are like socializing a lot less than me and have different social battery levels and enjoy different types of social settings before. But I'm trying to think, because I don't really know much about the other personality types and how they differ. But obviously, because my one's quite a thoughtful introvert, very empathetic, very intuitive. Whereas I imagine other introverts aren't as, focused on that. They're focused on other things. But yeah, I'm just trying to think. I don't think I can name an example right now, but I think there are other introverts that are nothing like me, because like an introvert, everyone is different. Like we all, perceive introvertism, that's not a word, as a different thing to each person. So yeah, because I have my friend, she's an introvert, but something she says, I'm like, no, I don't vibe with that. That's actually not me. But then I'll say something, she was like, yeah, no, I'm like that as well. So there's similarities, but also differences, which I think is the beauty of being an introvert, that there's great traits that you all share, but also differences about you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've worked with other extroverts before where I've thought they're nothing like me. Then I've realized they are a bit like me, and I'm sort of like trying not to accept it, but I have to begrudgingly accept it. It's just a fact of life. But I'm like, oh, I am kind of like them, and I quite like that person, even though I didn't like them at the start. So, what advice would you give to other introverts looking to build a career in the marketing industry?
I think firstly, acknowledge that being an introvert is not a bad thing. Like, it is, as we said, all the benefits of being an introvert. You can walk into a setting and it can be very valuable in a marketing setting. I remember one of my colleagues once telling me that it was really valuable when I spoke up, because it was, so rare and didn't happen as often. And I do have good ideas. And that really stuck with me, because I was like, oh, yeah, okay, I am good. So being an introvert is a good thing. So acknowledge that at first, but also just be yourself. I think being an introvert, you're naturally more, thinky, not a word. You're more thoughtful about situations. So you're more wary to, give your all in a situation. But being yourself is honestly the most valuable thing you could ever do. And people will really appreciate that you're just being who you are. And you also enjoy the world of marketing a lot more by being yourself. I'd also organise a schedule for you. Obviously, being employed in marketing is different to freelancing in marketing, but you can even put things in place of talking to your manager, saying I can't do that many meetings in a day. Could we make these shorter? Could we, alter this in a certain way because it's better for me? And just see what the flexibility is like, because so many managers want to be better managers. So you could speak to them and see what is, good for you. But yeah, also learning from who you are, what you do, and seeing it as an advantage. Like I said, I acknowledge that being an introvert is good, and then learning about why it's good. You'll notice the more you work in marketing and how you're acting compared to how everybody else is acting, and what you all bring to the group. So acknowledge that and really I suppose enjoy it before. And also as going on from that. The diversity of a marketing group is great. Like, you want people to be different, because if you didn't have different people in a group, you're not going to come up with different ideas. You're all going to think the same. I come up with the same ideas, and that's not creative. Like, that, you need creativity in marketing. So by being different, it's really going to help you aid your career, but also aid those campaigns, the copywriting you do, the social media, like whatever sort of part of marketing you work in. Being different to your colleague will really help you in building on someone's ideas or coming up with fresh new ideas, as you have a different perspective and also a different life experience.
No, I couldn't agree more. So I think that kind of it leads nicely really into the last question, which is all about, I mean, it's to be honest, this is just a recap question, everything that we've talked about. But let's say people watching this video who like me might be an extroverted person, might employ marketers within their team or as a service provider. As an introvert, what are some of the key takeaways you'd like them to get from this? What should people know about introverts that they may not know already? And if you want to say what you said before, that's absolutely fine. But if there's anything else you want to add to this, then please let me know, because I think our viewers would really appreciate it.
I think there's so many things. Like, as I said, speaking on meetings is hard. And I think as an introvert, you need to be prompted a bit, because you're going to think everyone wants, as I said before, to listen to the people that are talking rather than you. So if you have questions you can hand to that introvert, or after the meeting, if they didn't speak up, just go up to them and be like, was there any input you wanted to give? Did you have any ideas, any feedback? That'd be great. Or outwardly say in the meeting, if anyone wasn't comfortable speaking today, please email me afterwards. We can chat. I'd love to hear more ideas, because there were so many situations that I would have loved to have sat and just emailed everything I've just said, thought of in that meeting, because I didn't get to say it. I think just making it more accessible, that should, because someone hasn't said anything, they don't not have any ideas, and be like, I'm open, email me, we can book another meeting, just us if you have something you want to talk about, like a quick 5-minute to go over. And so everyone feels a bit included, because I think if you're an introvert, you're not going to feel included if you haven't spoken up in that meeting, and then the meeting's just forgotten. Because all the points are listed, and you're like, I actually had something to say. Just make sure the introverts in the room feel heard in any way you can. And also speak to those introverts when you have one-to-one meetings with them. About how you can improve that behavior and what's going to be good for them, because everyone works different. So if you create an environment where everyone feels included, but you won't know how to create that environment until you speak to people about what they actually want, because there's so many things you can do that are like by the book, but it doesn't mean they're going to work for every single person. So just see, in terms of like the individuals, what you can implement to help everybody else, and then educate that across your team and across the company, so everybody in your company feels seen and heard and valued. Just start a conversation, really. Talk to your colleagues, talk to people you work closely with, and like what works good for you, because you never know, you may have a colleague who's an introvert and is too shy to say like, oh, I'd really like if someone could ask to email after a meeting, or I'd really like if, because also one of my pet hates is when people put a meeting in the calendar with no agenda, because how is that helpful? No one needs that. Like, always give an agenda so people know what to prepare for, because extroverts obviously sometimes are a lot more confident and they'll go in the meeting and they'll just enjoy it. Whereas introverts like me like to know what the meeting's about, so I can prepare some notes, I can do a bit of research, I can make sure whatever I need to talk about is down, because I'm not very good on the spot sometimes. That is good to prepare. So always have an agenda. Always ask after the meeting if people want to add anything. They can email you or set up another meeting one-on-one too. And always just create an environment where people can give their suggestions, whether that's a one-to-one or whether it's just a message or an email if people don't want to talk. There's loads of ways you can make it accessible to make sure everyone's heard, I think.
Yeah, 100%. So I've worked with a couple of introverted people in like a managerial capacity. And we started off quite light. After a meeting, I would talk to them one-to-one, and then they would start sharing some of their ideas, and then that would grow to 2 or 3 people in a meeting where they'd speak up a bit more, and then over time they got that confidence to then speak in front of a bigger group of people. But it had to start from me sort of talking to them one-on-one to begin with, and just not in the sense of like, are you okay? Is everything okay? Just more like, what do you think about that? What ideas have you got? Make it open-ended. And honestly, it was amazing. It was amazing, some of the things that they came up with. And to be fair, the thing about the agenda, that wasn't something I'd ever considered. So that's a really useful tip. And looking back, it's definitely something that could have helped was having that agenda in place for people, so that if you did put them on the spot for whatever reason, they were prepared for it. Because being put on the spot is never nice regardless, but especially when you're not used to speaking very much, it must be
exactly
really hard. One thing I forgot to mention, actually, there's one last question that I've got written down here. I knew I'd forgotten something. It was about, and we talked about it earlier, so ambiverts, they're the lesser known cohort, identifies as neither exclusively an introvert or extrovert, so they have traits of each. I read one study by Adam Grant, who's a professor of management and psychology at the University of Pennsylvania. And that study found that 2/3 of people identify as ambiverts, which really surprised me. So can you talk to me about this group and your experience of working with people like this?
With ambiverts, I'm trying to think. I think I've worked with loads of people like this, but just unknowingly.
Yeah.
Because I do think sometimes I could come across as an extrovert, even though I'm not. Or so therefore I would say I'm more of an ambivert in certain situations because I'm not always introverted. And I think because it is a bit of both, everyone has it in them to be an ambivert, depending on who they're with. So I think it's really hard to know who is an ambivert and who's an extrovert and introvert, because people will change in different settings. So yeah, I don't really know about that one. Like I think I've witnessed it, but I can't give you full examples because I think people do change and evolve. Like I think when I got more confident in certain groups at work, I would seem more ambiverted because I would speak out a bit more. I would be louder. I would give ideas. Yeah. What about you? Have you had experience with ambiverts?
To be honest, I think sometimes I have elements of that myself, where I really like my own space when I'm writing. I don't like to be talking to people, or I don't even like to listen to noise. I think that's partly because of my Asperger's syndrome. So I have high functioning Asperger's syndrome, and sometimes I can get affected by that. So I can exhibit introvert tendencies in that way, which would shock quite a lot of people. But when I'm writing something, I just want to be left alone. Even sometimes in meetings, depending on my mood, I might not want to say anything at times, especially if I'm feeling a bit out of my comfort zone. My whole thing is, if I don't fully know what I'm talking about, or I'm not comfortable as being the authority in the room, I like to just let other people take the lead. But having said that, listen, if you put me on the spot, I can talk freely. Like, I will say stuff. But it's interesting you asked that, because I think that I may have some ambivert tendencies. Would you say that you're an introvert with ambivert tendencies then? So you've got like certain elements of it. Just
100%, because I don't think I think I used to be fully introverted, but I think as I've gotten older, I'm definitely have the tendencies of ambivert. I don't think I'm ever going to be an extrovert. I don't think we'll go that far. But I do think, I have the tendencies to dip in to the ambivert vibe, because there's times where I'm really loud and confident and outspoken and very like chatty, and don't really care what people think. I'm like, okay, here I am. But there's also settings where I'm just like, I need quiet with my book and I want to sit and observe the setting of the room. But I think you can pick up more how people are depending on if they're comfortable with you as well. Because I think if people are in a meeting, because as you said, like everyone has mood changes. Depending on if you're extrovert, introvert, like there may be extroverts in the room that are just, not feeling their best that day, so therefore not going to speak, and it doesn't make them introverted. It just makes them not in their 10 out of 10 energy mood. And that's fine. I think what actually going to the point, we'll go back to ambiverts, but the point before about one thing you can improve, I was thinking about, is when you have big ideation sessions and there's large groups of people, to split off into little groups.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That really helps. I don't know if you've done that before, because then people will be in smaller settings and they can really jump off ideas rather than have to scream over 15 people.
One thing that I noticed, so yes, I did do that when I worked in house before COVID ruined the world. But after COVID ruined the world, what I've noticed is that when I've been at networking events, so they've done this like big powwow, but what they've done is they've put us into certain rooms. So they'll do like an introduction for 5-10 minutes, but then they'll put us in rooms with certain people, and then they'll mix it up. So they'll then put me in a room with someone else, and it just gets everybody to speak and to know each other. Because if you're in a room with 3 people, you're going to feel a lot more confident than if you're on a Zoom call where you've got like, a gallery of about 50 people, and you're just thinking, oh my God, how can I speak in front of those 50 virtual faces? So I think that's a really good idea, and I'm really glad you brought that up. Yeah, well, no, it is. It's a really good. You've given lots of great examples on this that I think people will really appreciate. Whether they're freelancers like you and me or managers of people, then I think there's loads of useful nuggets there. So, brilliant again, Della. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. So we did this question on the last podcast, but just in case anyone didn't watch that, how dare you? Where can they find you if they want to connect with you or ask you anything?
So I'm on LinkedIn as my name, obviously, Della Driscoll, and then you can find me on Instagram, which is the Violet Network, and also I have a website which is thevioletnetwork.co.uk to learn more about me and my services. But yeah, feel free to always message me on LinkedIn or Instagram. I always love a chat with new people. So
brilliant. Thanks, Della.
Thank you so much. I loved this.